Okay, this is the first part of 9.6, which is dealing with inverse trigonometric ratios. So the page 269 is going to have the setup in which we are going to use to get the ratios you need for inverse tan, inverse sine, and inverse cosine. So that's the first thing that you need to realize on where to find that. So let's take a look at the next page, and we're going to look at number 1. So the best way to learn these is actually to set them up as we go along. So the first one, number 1, it talks about the cosine of angle 24 over 25. So for number 1, I have a right triangle. This is 7, this is E, this is F, this is G. So this measured is 24 and this one is 25. So we are trying to see if which angle cosine is creating with the ratio 24 over 25. So I'm going to start off with cosine. We're going to fill in a letter there, and we know the ratio is 24 over 25. So remember, cosine is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. So we know no matter what, the 25 is going to be on the bottom. So sine and cosine both put the 25 on the bottom. Okay, so that's the first thing we know. What the difference is how it's related. So cosine is adjacent. So in other words, it's going to create one of the sides of the angles. So the only one that ties with 24 is going to be F. Now recall that the 90-degree never gets even considered when you are talking about sine and cosine because it already has a 90-degree angle. It is not one of the two acute angles of a triangle. So F is the logical choice because I have it as an adjacent there and our hypotenuse there. So it's going to be angle F. So now that we have some basic foundations, let's look at number 2. This time we are doing the sine, and it's a right angle here. So here is G, F, square root 14, square root 2, E, and 2 square root 3. So for this particular one, we are looking for sine, and we know that sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. And this one's a little unique because in this particular one, we are giving you a decimal 0.38. And if you recall, these are square roots. So we're going to have to know which square root creates the 0.38. So let's take a calculator out. And let me grab one of your calculators so that you have it. All right, so if we put this here, let's put it over here where we have it, we are going to do the 3. So I'm looking for something that's not here. So it's not going to be G. So it's either going to be F or E. It's either going to be the opposite or this is the opposite. Well, 2 square root 3 over square root 14. So let's try that one. Let's see if it's F. So 2 second square root 3 divided by, and I'm going to put this in parentheses, second square root 14. And I get 0.925. So that's too big. It's not 0.38. So that one's not going to work. So let's try the other one. So let's try E as the square root 2 as its opposite. So second 2 divided by second square root 14. And this, I get 0.377, which does round to 0.38. So now that we have the 0.38 that we're looking for, we use square root 2 over square root 14. So this right here was the equivalent of the 0.38 they gave us. So if we know that, we know we are basing it off of angle E. Okay, so that's how you determine which angle they are looking for. Now, let's look at 3, 4, 5, and 6. We are using the inverse for these. So the sine inverse, tan inverse, and cosine inverse are basically going to be used by hitting the second button. So in your row on your calculator, if you notice, here's sine, there's sine -1, here's cosine -1, or the inverse of it. And then there's tan and its inverse, tan -1. So it has all of that located on the button. To get to those, remember you have to hit the second button and then that. So let's put these into perspective. So I have for number 3, sine h equals 0.2. So we know we're going to use sine as the setup. So the measure of angle h equals sine -1.2. So in my calculator, I am going to hit second sine, and then I put in 0.2. And this is going to give me 11.5 degrees. So that is the measure of angle h. So let's look at number 4. Number 4 is the same thing, only I'm using tan this time. So we have tan h equals 1. So once again, we're going to do the same thing. So I have second tan, and that'll give me my tan -1, and you're going to put a 1 in there. So when I hit that, I get 45. So this is just 45 degrees. So the measure of angle h is 45 degrees. So let's look at number 5. Number 5 is cosine h equals 0.33. So once again, measure angle h equals cosine -1 times 0.33. And I should have put this up here with this one. So the in-between step that should have gone here is measure of angle h equals tan -1 parenthesis 1, which is what we typed into our calculator. All right, so now that we have this put in, let's put this into our calculator. So measure angle h equals 70.7 degrees. And once again, you're going to do the same that you've been doing. You're going to hit the cosine, and it's going to go through. So for number 6, we are going to do sine h equals 0.89. So the measure of angle h equals sine -1.89. So the measure of angle h is going to end up giving me 62.9 degrees. Okay, folks, that is it for that side. When we go to the next page, we are going to have a second video on that, and that is going to be how to do the 7 through 11.